Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with another old world video. Obviously, we are getting closer and closer to the end of 2023, and as we have been told by Games Workshop, one of the earliest releases for 2024 is going to be the old world, and I for one am so very excited. I'm sure you will already be aware of this if you watched any of my other old world videos, but if you haven't and you're here for the first time, I am extremely passionate about Warhammer the Old World. Old Warhammer is one of my favorite game systems, and I'm very much looking forward to delving back into that with the launch of Old World. So one of the things that I want to do is, as a bare minimum, get a single painting video out for every single faction that is going to be taking part in the beginning or launch of the Old World. So they've announced like 9 armies are going to participate. I've already given you content for Bretonnians and Tomb Kings. So now I'm going to get to work on the Wood Elves. Okay, and Wood Elves is actually one of those factions for the old world which I didn't do when it was around before. I'd pretty much done every single other army apart from a Wood Elf army, so I don't have that many things lying around for a Wood Elves. I have a few nice bits and pieces, but no real basic troops or anything, no boxes of Glade Guard or Wild Riders or anything like that. I've just got a couple of nice characters, so I thought what I would do today is focus on one of the most beautiful elf characters, if not one of the most beautiful old world characters that has ever existed. So straight out of his clan pack is going to be the Wood Elf Highborn with great weapon. He's an iconic figure for old Warhammer. He has been in I don't know how many golden demons and stuff like that. Absolutely stunning. Now this one unfortunately has a slight flaw in that he is fine cast, and I vowed to myself that I would not work with any fine cast models years ago, but I don't really have a choice with this particular one. I don't want him to go to waste, and I'm going to see if I can use kind of newer paints, newer technology to make this fine cast model come to life and look beautiful on the tabletop. So that's what I'm going to do in today's video. Before I get into it, 2 key points. 1, thank you patrons for all your continued support. You are, of course, as always, amazing. Without you guys, I could not keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. If you're interested in getting involved with that, there's links to it in the description below. You get access to a private Discord server and an extra video every single week just for you guys. So 2 awesome benefits for becoming a member. Except a free membership. The free membership does absolutely nothing, so please ignore that if you click on the link. And 2, I am trying to get to 40,000 subscribers by the end of this year. It is my goal, so if you want to help me get there, please smash that subscribe button and help me do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Let's get into the video. And this is the iconic Wood Elf Noble with great weapon. If you are around during the time, you will all recognize this miniature. He is very, very, very famous, particularly popular amongst painters and people who were entering painting competitions at the time. He very commonly would use this miniature because he was so nice. Now obviously sculpting and design and tooling and all that stuff has come on a long way since this model was out, so it is a little bit dated in some areas, but I am hoping that I can achieve some kind of a standard that I'm happy with, or I would have been super happy with back then. Now obviously this is the Citadel Finecast version. I don't really need to get into the details of Citadel Finecast, but it is a resin based material. Originally this model was cast in metal. I wish I had a metal version, but I do not. I have this one, and resin was, or the fine cast resin was notoriously bad. Now this sculpt and this particular cast didn't seem to be bad at all. No bubbles or anything like that. If you don't know what bubbles in resin are, then you're a very lucky person. Back in the fine cast days, bubbles were your literal worst nightmare. I gave him a slightly more elevated base, using just a bit of cork. I just wanted him to stand a little bit taller so that when I place him into a unit of Wood Elf soldiers, he would obviously stand out as the boss. I gave him my standard spray, grey black and then grey sear. And now I'm ready to start painting him. And I think for this miniature, usually I start and I go whole hog in with contrast for it, but I want to get a nice base coat down on the armor first. I'm going to go for Screaming Bell because he has this really nice kind of really aged gold. Obviously this is a Wood Elf, keyword elf. This suit of armor he's wearing could be 1,000 years old for all I know. And it's always been depicted kind of as that. It's a very worn old, really pale and pallid, bronzy, brassy gold. So obviously I'm going to start with a brassy start. And I get this on all the bits of the armor which are visible. And I used obviously lots of reference pictures to make sure I didn't kind of overselect. Like I was saying before, because of the tooling of the day, lots of the kind of features blend into another, like his entire back is connected to his cape and flows down between his legs. You kind of have to guess where the metallic parts are sometimes. And there is some thing to be said about using leathers and having that armor be leather, which would suit Wood Elves just as well as the metallics would. Traditionally, most of the other Wood Elf warriors do have leather armor, but obviously this particular model, as you saw on the cover of his packet, is mostly bronze, make him stand out as the hero, I guess. Plague Bear Flesh was the first green I decided to apply to all of the fabric and cloth of this particular model. And this is another interesting point of fact, is that you can, if you ever read one of the old Warhammer Wood Elf army books, you've noticed that the armies are generally based around seasons. So you can have them in winter, spring, summer, autumn, and they all had different color schemes depending on that. So I'm going for like a high summer scheme. It's always my favorite style. That or autumn with all the deep browns and oranges. But I think for this traditional guy, I'm going to go for what the box art shows, which is, like I said, traditional summer. After that, I grabbed some Gore Grunt of Fur and hit all the leather parts on that. So for instance, his boots, he's got all like the little sleeves of his jacket, a lot of his quiver, his bow, those kind of things. A small bit of Blood Angel's red contrast was then used for things like the handles of his sword, the handle of his bow, and the fletches or the feathers of his arrows are also done in a nice rich red. There just seems to be a tad bit of red on all of his weapons, so I followed that through. It was a nice little jump. Guilliman Flesh was used as a base coat for all of the skin. So obviously there's not a lot showing, so it's just his hands and like half his face is on show. So nothing crazy. This guy is veiled in mystery. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm not really a big Wood Elf player, never was back in the day, but it is one of the armies I'm definitely going to be focusing on with the old world, mainly because I've never really experienced it. This might be the first Wood Elf model that I've ever painted, which is kind of a weird thing to say that I'm starting with this model, but it seems only right and proper. So I am looking forward to delving into the rest of the range and having a good play around, so I hope they bring back all those old kits for us. Skeleton Horde was then used for the hair and the shafts of the arrows. You can see through the quiver. It's only a very small detail, but the Skeleton Horde acts as a really nice base coat for blonde hair. It's a really nice pale sandy color. Once again, being careful not to hit the face or any of the other details that I've already put base coats on. After that, we are going to move on to Leadbelcher, and obviously we have the paint of the sword. It's pretty much only the blade of the sword that we're going to be doing with this. Now, one of the things that I did do is I didn't do the swirls down the blade when I was on the brass stage. I just thought it would be more difficult before I did the silver. So I painted the silver sword here, and then once that was dry, I went back over with the brass stage. That exactly the same color I used for the armor, for those nice kind of swirly patterns, just to make his awesome sword stand out a little bit more. As you can see, he's already starting to come to life, and all I've been doing is applying base coat so far, so I'm really happy with him so far. Wildwood was then brought in for the branch that he was standing on, but I also decided to soak all of the bark and stuff in that as well. Obviously it's a nice bright pale color, and I wanted to see more like earth and dirt and stuff like that, so I decided Wildwood would be a great starting point for that, and obviously I'll be dry brushing it up a little bit later on. Being careful not to hit his feet and not to hit that sprite, which is hiding underneath that thing. For anyone who doesn't know what a sprite is, Wood Elves are kind of covered in these extra kind of mythical creatures, little sprites, little forest sprites. And they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and all sorts of colors. I'm going to stick with the box art, which is the traditional blue sprite. Think of like Cornish pixies from Harry Potter. That's kind of what a sprite is to me, little mischievous little entities that inhabit the forest with the Wood Elves. After that, I just grabbed some textured mud from AK, and I used this to blend the noob size base in with that cork bark that I used. It's not cork bark, it's just cork, sorry. Obviously I had to give that a good bit of time to dry. So while I was deciding to let the base dry, I went and grabbed some Seraphim Sepia and applied this all over the rest of the model. So again, I had a really nice tone to the wood, all of the armor, the green face, all those bits and pieces. Seraphim Sepia is going to do a really nice job in shading down and giving us a really nice platform for moving on to the layering stage. With this stage, you want to just be careful not to accidentally hit the mud on the base and then pull that up to the model, or it'll be a bit of a disaster. Now, before I jumped into the layering, I did do the dry brushing on the base. and black rimmet, so I've got a really nice base to build the model up from. Now it's time to go on to the green, and I did experiment with a slightly more complicated thing that I normally would. So I'm actually going to build this cloak up with 4 layers or 3 more layers of green, starting with Lauren Forest. Slowly but surely going to feather it down, leaving as much shade as I possibly can in recesses and dark places of the folds. And then I'm basically going to keep building up those different green tones, leaving a little bit behind, a little bit of kind of model, a little bit more like scratchy paint job to give like a bunch of different tones of green, which I think will help that kind of high summer Wood Elf aesthetic hold. Strachan green was the second one that I'm going to come in with. And basically it's following exactly the same process, exactly the same principle as the last one, just less. Just a little bit less. As you can see, I've got a much lighter brush to control here. And I'm going to follow that along and do the same thing, leaving behind some of that previous green, but making that green pop even more. It's already starting to look less flat. And then for last one, we're going to jump straight up to Ogre and Camo, which is nearly kind of a bone color. And for this, we really only want to go for the edges and some of the more fine parts. Make sure to paint in and around the nice vines and stuff that is kind of growing down through his cape. The vines got painted the exact same as the rest as we're going along. So Plague Bear flesh for the leaves and the wild wood for all of the stems or stalks, if you will. Jumping up now to Hasnot Copper for all of the armor. I just want to brighten it up. It's like I said, I want it to look like that really bright kind of patinaed gold. Not patinaed, once again, that's the wrong name. I don't want to add any green or anything like that to it. I just want it to be that old, polished, worn gold. Now this did in fact end up making it a little bit pale. Kind of a little bit more pale than I wanted it to be. So I do go back a little bit later and touch it up with another shade. Just to bring it more towards the tone I think matches the artwork cover of the clan pack, and you know, more my kind of childhood memory of this model. But still, very much taking my time with that copper. Make sure I get a nice, neat and tidy job. Back in with the lead belcher, and this is very much to highlight the sword, not hitting those gold swirls that we've also highlighted a moment ago. So as you can see, I'm just going in and around and just hitting all the sharp edges of the sword, or anywhere where some shade may have pooled that I didn't particularly want it to. Like I said, the sword is a very focal point of this miniature, so you want to do a nice job on it. Mornfang Brown was then used to highlight all of the brown parts, so all the leathers, his boots, like I said, his upper sleeves, his quiver, the arms of his bow, and bits and pieces like that. You may notice that I use Mornfang Air. I use a bunch of air paints like standard layer paints, and they just count as kind of pre-thinned ones. So some of the darker ones, all the browns, I like all the red air paints and stuff like that really work a treat. If you go into like air whites and air yellows, they're going to do very little for you, so don't waste your time with that. Okay, I think we're really moving in the right direction here. I'm starting to really love how the model turned out. Mephiston Red Air was brought in, and then I just had some very quick scratchy highlights to all of the handles and wraps for obviously the sword, once again his bow, the feathers on his arrows, just to brighten them up and give it that kind of 3 spots of red color throughout the model. Cadian Flesh Tone was then used to highlight the face. I did actually go in with Kislev Flesh afterwards to pump it up again. I'm not sure if I managed to capture that footage or whether I lost it. Sounds like something that I would do, so I apologize if I didn't show. But Kislev Flesh was then brought in for the kind of tips of the nose and tops of the cheekbones and top of the forehead and the very tips of the finger, like those kind of bits. The final highlight of the skin. Obviously he's an elf, so pale skin is something that really resonates with them. Reikland Flesh Shade is a shade that I did bring back in and gave it a quick coat across all the armor. Now this is the newer 18mm pot of Reikland Flesh Shade, so it is quite thin. It does just sell in the recess. It's not going to make it really dark and stain it awfully, but it is going to give it a little bit more warmth, which I think matches the greens and the reds a little bit more. Some Zandri Dust was brought in to highlight his hair. And then, of course, the shafts of the arrows out of his back. And obviously, while I had like Talazar Blue out before, I did do like the gemstone on his right lapel there. Little details like that got done. I added a bright green to the feathers going up and down his cape. Any bright green will do. I didn't actually end up touching the sprite at all. From the Talazar blue and the shade that I put on, I just left him alone. And then I added in some nice grass tufts and a little bit of extra basic material to give him that wood elf feel, the sprite poking through the bushes. And that's me, I think, ticking a model off that I've wanted to paint it for, I honestly don't know how many, like 20 years. And I'm so happy to finally have him in my collection. I've added him to my old world shelf that I've been slowly building up over the last couple of weeks. And I think he looks absolutely brilliant there. A few images, some still images of him there. Not sure if I got the images quite right, but it'll do the job for now until I add him in to an actual Wood Elf force sometime in the new year. I think I'm going to start off my old world collection with Bretonnians and Beastmen. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay guys, and there we have it. We have a finished High Elf Noble with great weapon. Gave him a nice scenic base so he stands a little bit taller, a little bit more elegant if he sits in a unit of Elf Warriors or High Elf Warriors. So yeah, really pleased with how he turned out. The fine cast wasn't really as much of an issue as I was terrified it was going to be, but yeah, either way, very happy to have him now painted in my collection. Very nice to have another model crossed off the list for the old world. Like I said at the beginning of this video, old world is going to be a big part of the content for my channel and in my personal life. I'm going to play a lot of games in old world. I'm going to try and organize some tournaments and events and campaigns and all sorts of different bits and pieces. So if that's something that interests you, make sure you hit subscribe, follow along, check me out on all my other socials as well, because I'll be posting on there for everything, whether that be Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook, all the places. Ignore those last two, I don't really post there really. But thank you guys so much for sticking around. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like. Ask me anything you want in the comments below, including letting me know what other old world content you want to see in the new year. Thank you guys, have a great Christmas, and I'll see you in the next video.